Anything said on this show represents opinions only and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice. Welcome to Finances the Other F Word, a podcast about the money behind current events where we do the research so you won't have to. Here is your host, Mello, certified financial planner and author of Finances the Other F Word. Catch Mello live on the Station Head app Wednesday mornings at 6 a.m. Pacific Time via the handle @MomentOfMetal. Listener discretion is advised.
So that song was for me this morning. I had mentioned to you guys before on the show that anytime I'm feeling down, I watch the Shoot to Thrill video, of course, of AC/DC, but it's intercut with the very first Iron Man. And the edit is fucking amazing. And it shows the live concert footage from when they were in somewhere in South America. And the crowd is huge. People are losing their shit. They're having such a great time. And anytime I feel like a little bogged down by the day, I put that video on and it gets me pumped. I don't know, the edit is just fucking amazing. The way they cut the crowd with the band, with the Iron Man movie, fucking amazing. Good morning. I'm feeling a little dizzy this morning for some reason, not really feeling super great physically. And the topic is pretty foreboding that we're going to cover today. So we are going to talk about the big, beautiful bill as it has been deemed by, I don't fucking know, somebody, right? And we are going to talk about, let me turn my headset down. Woo! I was rocking out. We're going to talk about what that means for our national debt. We're going to talk about the current state of our national debt and what that means for your kids and for you and for me and your grandkids. And then we are going to talk about recession indicators that are flashing and what that is going to do, tie that all into GDP, and then we're going to get into the actual nitty-gritty of the tax bill. But we need to establish a couple things first so that when we talk about what's in the tax bill, you understand, A, how it's going to affect you, and B, the basis of what is in the tax bill. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. So let's get into this is why I was listening to Shoot to Thrill, and then I had to do it again before I started because we're getting into some heavy stuff. We all know the national debt is increasing. I had no idea. You guys, I had no idea it was this high. So let's get into it. And I got my notes in front of me. Good times. So currently, as of June 2025, so as of June 18th, at the time of this recording of 2025, our national debt is currently $36.21 trillion. $36.21 trillion, right? So I've talked before about the difference between billions, millions, and trillions. If somebody can find it and drop it in chat, that's cool. If not, as soon as I play the next song, I'll pull up the comparison again. But I want you guys to understand exactly how much fucking money this is. Now, within that $36.21 trillion in our national deficit, which means bad, which means negative, right? 28.95 trillion of that is held by the public. Now, the public could be you and I. The public could be foreign countries. And so let's talk just about that number. Why does that matter to you and me? Well, it matters to you and me because as we talk about this tax bill, there's going to be a lot of programs that get cut, right? And if it's a program that you happen to have used in the past, or maybe you're currently on now, or if it's something that you feel passionate about, like SNAP, like making sure that kids have food, this number is going to tie into that. So let's talk about this real quick. So debt held by the public is $28.95 trillion. What that means is that the public, whoever that encompasses, okay, is buying U.S. Treasuries, and currently the United States government owes to those people $28.95 trillion. So let me explain real quickly again how a bond works for you guys. If I have a yoga pants store and I need to build a warehouse to store my yoga pants, I can go to a bank and ask them to give me finances, like, loan me money. and I can make the payments and then pay them back, and then they're done. My warehouse is built. My warehouse is full of yoga pants. Okay. Or what I can do under certain circumstances is I can go to the street, Wall Street, and I can issue a bond for, say, $1,000 that pays a 6% interest rate with a term of 10 years. And so what happens is that you give me $1,000, I give you my bond, and then every year I pay you $60 in interest, and then at the end of the 10-year term, I give you back your $1,000 and your very last $60 payment, and our transaction is done. What you did is you have just, buying my bond, you have just stepped in the place of the bank. And instead of doing bank lending, I have helped finance your warehouse for you. And in turn, you have helped finance my warehouse for me. And in turn, I have paid you back, and we're done. So that's what treasuries do, right? Is that this is the government saying, hey, we need money. So we're going to issue treasuries. There's treasury notes, there's treasury bills, there's with different maturities, and that's not what this conversation is about right now. But what that means is that the public, whoever they include, domestically United States citizens or United States people in the United States, plus held globally, things that were held abroad, we owe $28.95 trillion. Now, a couple weeks ago, we lost our last AAA rating. So I did a whole show a couple years ago when the very first time that we got downgraded on the treasuries. There's multiple bond credit rating agencies, and one of them was like, yeah, no, fuck that. And I think they took us to a AA plus, or maybe it was I think it was a AA plus. Anyway, and so the point is that was a huge deal. It was the first time it happened to us. Well, now, what wasn't made such a huge deal, but should have been, is that we lost our very last AAA rating, which means no one has the United States Treasury debt at AAA rating anymore. The reason why that's such a big deal is because, as I talk, let me finish this thought, then let me bring that up. The reason why that's a big deal is because if there is any doubt that you are not going to be able to pay me back for the bonds that I'm buying from your country, then you better pay me more motherfucking interest on that bond for me to buy it, because now you are considered more risky. Okay? So what I want you guys to follow through this with me is I want you to follow the thread. I want you to see what's happening now. I want you to see what is meaning, like where tax-wise where we're at now. I want you to know where we are in the economic cycle right now, and then I want to weave that through what that is going to look for the national debt in the future, at least the short-term future, and what that is going to mean to your life directly. And so this interplay between the debt and the debt that we issue to raise money, if we're lowering taxes, then we have to raise money other ways. Okay? So if we continue to not tax the 100 wealthiest families in America the way they should be taxed, then that needs to be compensated by issuing debt. And in order to do that, people need to want to buy our debt. And if people don't want to buy our debt, then that means that the United States government needs to pay them more interest in order to do that. And so let's bring this full circle. So why does that matter to you? Because what that means is that in the budget, there is a line item for interest on the debt that we are paying. So in my previous example, I told you 6%, and I told you that's $60 that I'm paying. Personally, that would be a line item on my budget, right? But for the government, with the government, it's the same exact thing. So with the government, they have a line item that has all of the interest on the debt that they owe. And so the United States government has, with this belief of American exceptionalism, which we've talked before, has been a safe haven. So anytime there's recession or concerns of war in the world, a lot of countries have typically found a safe haven to put their money into United States Treasury, thus converting their currency into US dollars, thus keeping the US dollar strong. This is the connection I want you guys to see through all of this. But with all of the things going on in the economy right now and the tariffs, the introduction of the tariffs, and apparently there was some type of thing that was signed between the European Union and the United States. I don't have the details of that, but the point is that if with all of the things that are happening right now, if our trade suffers, that means that we're not going to be able to produce as much stuff, the things that we do produce, to export them out, which means that our GDP is going to fall, which means that the debt is going to become a larger percentage of our GDP, our gross domestic product. So let's think of this in a household. This is what it means, okay? If you make, I don't know, $50,000 a year, and currently right now, your credit card payments represent 6% of your income, okay? But now you lose your job because a recession comes, and now you can only get a job paying $40,000. By default, the percentage of payments to credit cards is going to go higher than, what did I say, 6 or 7%, whatever. It's going to be higher. So now maybe it'll represent 9% of your overall payment, whatever. I'm not doing the math in my head. I'm just trying to illustrate a point here, okay? That's not good. And so right now we have $28.95 trillion that is held by the public. In addition to that, we have $7.26 trillion that is held intra-government. So I did a whole episode on Social Security. I broke down how it works. I broke down the numbers at the time. That was on Finances the Other Effort. Well, this is all Finances the Other Effort. And I explained the house of cards that it was. So the Social Security Trust Fund funds itself by buying U.S. debt. So it's like this ridiculous round robin. So we raise debt in part to pay for Social Security, and then Social Security ends up buying the debt that we actually created to try to fund Social Security, and then around we fucking go. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? So having our debt downgraded is a big fucking deal. And owing $36.21 trillion is a big fucking deal. So let's break that down just per person. Now, this is not what each person owes, okay? But I want to try to explain to you what that means debt per person in the United States that we're holding, okay? And I have some GDP numbers here in a minute. So if the U.S. population estimated right now is around $340 million, that means that each person is currently carrying about $106,000 of debt per person if we were to each take a slice of that pie, of that $36.21 trillion pie. And this is the deal, right? You can say Republican, small government, or Democrats, social, blah, blah. Everybody shut the fuck up with all of that. We owe $36.21 trillion fucking dollars. I don't give a fuck what side of the aisle you were on. That is fucking ridiculous. We are saddling the future generations with $36.21 trillion in debt. The last time we had a budget fucking surplus, which, by the way, is what all the 99% has to run on. We can't just be fucking running on deficits every motherfucking month because we're not going to get ahead. Sorry, my mouth is getting bad because I'm getting a little pissed. Woosah, calm down, Mel. But motherfucking government, since Clinton, has done exactly that to the tune, I'm going to repeat it again, $36.21 trillion, okay? So if you're assuming that the average household is 2.5 people or whatever, that's approximately $275,000 per household, okay? So you're looking at, if you, like I said, if you were to break it down, about $106,000 per person, okay? That means that interest rate costs are going to go up. That means that there's less flexibility on public spending and that there is potential tax pressure down the road. So I told you before on one of the previous shows that issuing debt or lowering taxes, it's the same thing. It's the same side of the same coin. We're still creating a deficit. All right. So regardless of what a Democrat's talking or a Republican is talking, the bottom line is it's the same motherfucking shit. So in Trump's first term, okay, and this was he borrowed, let me back up. So in Trump's first term, we borrowed 8.4 trillion dollars. Okay. So this was debt issued. This is the bonds that I just told you about. All right. That made a net debt change to the deficit of $7.8 trillion. Currently, right now, we are at $600 billion, adding to that deficit to the tune of potentially reaching another $1 trillion this year. The expectation is that if this big, beautiful bill goes through as written, that it will add anywhere from $2.4 trillion to $3 trillion to our deficit over the next 10 fucking years. So Biden, in his only term, he added, they issued debt of 4.5 trillion, and that changed their deficit by 2.6 trillion. Okay. So every administration is doing this. All right. Every administration is doing this. Every administration is continuing to add on it. And the reason why this bill is such a big fucking deal, well, it's always a big deal when a tax thing comes through. But it's because of the simple fact, and now I'm getting all upset. I'm looking ahead started looking ahead at my notes to see what my next thought was, and then I forgot what that actual thought was. But it's a big fucking deal, and I'll remember why here in a moment, okay? So I'm going to play a quick song, and I'm going to come back, and then what we need to do is we need to explore the tax cuts of 2017 in Trump's first term, because those tax breaks are still in this big, beautiful bill. They're making them permanent. So the way that it happened is that Trump's administration in the first term proposed it. It passed Congress. It was signed by Trump at the time, and it was all the tax breaks were supposed to expire in 2025. So now, of course, it is 2025, and so they are looking, as part of this big, beautiful bill, they're looking at keeping those permanent. Okay, permanent, which means that there's only additional things added to this bill in lieu of the fact that we can't stop adding to the deficit as is. So not only are we not going to fix that, we've also downgraded our bond rating. We've added way more fucking money to the debt. And let me find my GDP numbers real quick. We are currently at an estimated anywhere of 121 to 124% of GDP. So that means that on a conservative level, we owe 21% more money than we can create, than we can make in this country. Okay, so we as a household are extremely overextended. That means that every fucking month we are going in the hole, going in the hole, going in the hole. And now I remembered my original thought. The reason why this is a big deal is because the fucking debt ceiling debate is coming up again. And that is in one of the modifications that the Senate sent back to the House for them to be arguing over right now. And we know that every time there's a debt ceiling debate, the market usually pulls back. It's a whole fucking big deal. Plus, we have indicators that are showing us that a recession is coming. So let me touch on those real quick. Actually, no, I'm going to play a song and I'm going to come back and I'll be right back with that. So I heard that song yesterday while I was going to the gym because I'm trying to get off the little bit of this menopause weight. Ladies, I see you. And I was like, holy shit, I haven't heard that song in a while. So I decided to play it. So I found it. Just so you guys, again, to remind everybody, the difference between million, billion, and trillion, okay? A million would be, in seconds, 11.5 days ago, okay? A billion would be 31.7 years ago in seconds, and a trillion would be 32,000 years ago. So when I talk about our current deficit being $36.21 trillion, each trillion represents 32,000 years. So I want you guys to understand the numbers in your mind. But here's where I want to start kind of bringing this all together, because we are on a recession watch. Okay? Now, every administration, both sides of the aisle, have just been adding to the deficit. All right. And so what happens is regardless of what bullshit they're putting through, we are adding to the deficit, which means that we either need to raise taxes or we need to issue more debt. So if issuing more debt is going to be harder because our credit ratings have dropped, and that thus means that the line item within our overall United States budget on the interest that we have to pay people who owns our debt is going to increase. That means that there is less money to put in other things that you might find or you are passionate about. Not only that, it actually affects your credit card rates. So the more debt that the United States has is going to affect the Fed funds rate. And the Fed funds rate is what contributes to our debt. So it's not, I want you guys to understand this. Like, I don't want you to go, okay, the country as a whole owns $36.21 trillion, and that's a lot of money, but that's not me. So that's not going to affect me. They're just going to have to figure it out. That's what we elected them for, right? No, it is going to fucking affect you. So every fucking administration that adds money to the deficit is a fucking alarm bell, because it is affecting you. It is affecting the 99%. And let's talk about recession. Okay? So in the event that we go into recession, and we're going to talk about some indicators here in a second, but in the event that we go into recession, that means that our GDP, gross domestic product, that means that slows, which means that we are producing less stuff. Basically, we're making less money. However, our $28.95 trillion in public debt that is held, because I'm not going to even talk about the intergovernment holdings, our $28.95 trillion in debt that's held, that still is due, which means that, and like the example I gave you guys before of if you own, if you make $50,000 and your credit card debt is, 7% of your income, and then a recession hits and you can only make $40,000 a year, by default, that 7% becomes a greater number. This is the same thing that happens with our GDP. So then what does that mean? Let's fucking round robin this whole motherfucker all over again. That means that per percentage of our GDP, our debt is taking up more of it. So instead of anywhere between 121% to 124% of GDP currently as it stands, maybe it's going to be 128% or 130%. So what does that mean? The credit agencies are going to say, wow, now their debt is taking up even more of the money that they can generate. Let's downgrade them again. So let's talk about Greece real fucking quick. So in 2008, we went through 2008, we bottomed in the market in March of 2009, and then we gave fucking Europe our cold, right? And then everybody caught it, and then everybody went into recession after our Great Recession in 2008. And Greece was a huge fucking issue because these I don't want to say motherfuckers, because then it sounds like I'm mad at Greek people, but I'm not mad at Greek people. I'm just saying, like, everybody's a motherfucker right now, right? Like you, me, everybody's motherfuckers. These motherfuckers, talking about Greece itself, were like, I think it was like 100, if I can remember correctly, 150% of their GDP or something fucking ridiculous, which meant that they owed 50% more than they could produce as a country. And fucking here we go. As Americans, we're just fucking marching right to it. And we are a much, much bigger economy. And as it stands now, barely, we are still the largest economy in the United States. So this is how we fucking round robin. Then what happens is that our treasuries get downgraded, which means that then the United States government has to then issue more treasuries at higher interest rates to pay people to actually want to hold our debt, which means that that becomes a bigger line item in our budget, which means that it ends up cutting more of the programs that are necessities to the lowest income earners in the United States, which means that if they need care, they end up in the emergency room, which means that they can't pay, which means that they get delinquent, which means that that rolls up. And then what fucking happens? The recession extrapolates out. And now we fucking round robin over and over and over again. And these are the cycles that are very hard to break unless we have massive reform, because something hit the fan so bad, like in 2008, where we almost went off the motherfucking cliff. Okay, and I say this all the time, and I know you're tired of hearing it, I'm going to say it again. You have no idea how close we were to failure. You have no idea. Think about as close as you can think of we were to failure, and then go fucking further than that. That's how close we were. And it was the Dodd-Frank Act and the TARP bailout that put the reform in, which has been completely dismantled now. And if you remember my last show, we talked about crypto and the bank's exposure to crypto. So we have all the makings of a cycle that's not something, it's on a merry-go-round we don't want to be on. Okay? So this is when I'm trying to weave the thread through all of this, I don't want you to think of everything as standalone things. I want you to understand how this number affects this number, that affects this number, that affects this number, that comes back to fucking me and my money and my kids and my family and my financial goals, whatever they might be. And this leads us to the fucking tax bill, okay? So in order to understand what's in this tax bill, we need to understand what was in the 2017 tax cuts that were passed under the first Trump administration, because those are going to be made permanent. They're locked in. Then there's going to be other things added that we're going to talk about towards the end of the hour here. So in 2017, for the 99%, we got lowered tax rates. All right. So our 25% tax bracket went to 22%, and our 15% tax bracket went down to 12%. Okay. So that's great. That's wonderful. Like, yay, we got 3% break. Okay. Remember that number. Fucking remember that 3% break. All right. Then the standard deduction got doubled. Okay, so for individuals, for single people like myself, it went from $6,000 to $12,000, and then for married couples, it went from $12,000 to $24,000. So you used to be able to itemize on your taxes. When you do your taxes, you can do one of two things: you can itemize, or you can take the standard deduction, whichever is going to be the most beneficial to you as a person. And so the thing is that they doubled the standard deduction, which did and could help the lowest of income earners in the United States. Okay. So those two things, you're like, okay, cool. We got a little bit of breathing room, 3%. Okay. 3%. And we got our deductions doubled. Then what it did is it capped the SALT. So SALT deduction is state and local tax, right? Deduction to $10,000. So you can write off your state and local tax up to a cap of $10,000. I'm not a CPA. I'm not going to get into that. I just want to let you guys know. If you have further questions on that, take it up with a tax professional. I am not that guy. All right. So for people in higher tax states, this hurt them, because now instead of being able to write off maybe $50,000, I'm just throwing that number out there, in state and local taxes on their federal income tax, they were capped at $10,000. It also increased the child tax credit, doubled it from $1,000 to $2,000, and it eliminated the personal exemption. So it just basically said we're going to have one exemption, one deduction. We're going to take the per person household of $4,050 exemption gone. Okay. Now, so just those by themselves seem great, right? We got a 3% deduction in our tax brackets. We got our standard deduction doubled. It lowered the write-offs for state and local taxes, right? It doubled the child care credit. And the exemption, went away. So you're like, wow, that sounds pretty fucking awesome. Okay, now let's fucking talk about what it did for the 1 motherfucking percent. I'm sorry, I'm getting very heated right now, and I'm trying to calm my happy little ass down. So these same tax breaks, that was what it did for you, the 99%. Let's talk about what it did for the 1%. It cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% permanently. Okay, so when I play my next song, or somebody, they feel the gumption, we will pull up just some large company like Apple and see what their profits were for the fucking year. And we'll see exactly how much tax revenue was lost. So it cut the corporate tax rate from $35 to 21% permanently. Now, let me scroll back up on my notes. What did I just tell you? The 25% tax bracket went to 22%. The 15% tax bracket went to 12%. So what that fucking means, what I just fucking told you, is that the lowest corporate tax rate is lower than what most Americans pay. This is why our deficit keeps getting increased. Okay, so it cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% permanently. Now, under the Biden administration, to be fair, he made no changes to this. He did try to raise the corporate tax rate, and he did try to raise the tax rate on wealthiest Americans. But because Congress is divided, it went nowhere. Okay, so these cuts have been in place since the first administration. And this is the thing that keeps happening, is that whatever administration comes in, they do whatever they feel is their philosophy of how the government should be ran. Then they tack on more deficit, and then they kick it down the road to the next administration, who maybe changes it or maybe doesn't change it. But even through a different administration, the tax cuts were still being felt. And this happened with the Bush tax cuts too, and the fiscal cliff. That was a fucking fun year. We had the fiscal cliff and the expiration of the Bush tax cuts, literally at the same one. It was a big fucking deal in the market, okay? And so what we have is we have that still being felt, which means that there's still debt being added, because if you are still not charging the 1% fairly, then by default, we either need to issue more debt to keep our country running, which leads us back into the round robin, right? Or we're just going to continue to tack on the deficit, which is what we've seen. It created a 20% pass-through deduction for small businesses. Now, this, good and bad, okay? So LLCs and, S-corps, freelancers and stuff like that, they can deduct part of their income. Okay, now this is one of the things that they are still planning. I do not know all of the ins and outs of that specifically, as far as what you need to be able to qualify for that. But that is one of the things that was part of the 2017 taxes that is still in effect. The carried interest loophole, okay, which we're gonna talk about this here in a second. It kept the carried interest loophole. So hedge fund managers. So let's break it down again to the 99% and the 1%. The 1% invests in hedge funds. Now, some of the top 99% can invest in hedge funds, but usually they are private placement, which means that you need to have a certain amount of wealth or income in order to get access to those investments. And or it's usually the 1% that can do it because they have spared extra capital that they can put in something considered more risky so that they can get a potential better return. Where the 99%, we don't have that. If you have, $400,000 in your 401k, you can't take $250,000 of it and decide to put it in something speculative and roll the fucking dice. But if you have millions and millions and millions of dollars, then $250,000 is child's play to you. All right. So hedge fund managers who cater to the 1%, hedge fund managers pay capital gains taxes on their income. Okay, so this is called the carried interest loophole. And so what it does is it allows hedge fund managers who get paid money, income, just like you and I do, from their working endeavors, but they don't fall under the tax code that we do. They get to pay 20% instead of ordinary income tax, which typically for a hedge fund manager would put them at the highest current tax bracket, which is 37%. So their income gets to be tax advantage treated when they would technically be in the 37%. Now, if this pisses you off, good, it should. I want to piss you off into action, all right? I want you guys to know what's going on so that you are aware when you're seeing the deficit, when you're out there and you're hearing different politicians say XYZ, regardless of what side they're on. I want you to understand how this is all connected. And I want you to understand that this is the shit that is baked into the tax code, why the 1% keeps getting richer and the 99% keeps getting poorer. And I told you guys at the top of the hour that right now, with current data, that would estimate that of our national debt, $106,000 per person. Now, if for some reason, which it would never happen, but we're just going to use this as an example, the federal government said, hey, great, we need to close our deficit. Everybody give us $106,000. There is no way that the 99% could produce that. However, the richest Americans could break that off very easily and pay their share. So the example. The reason I'm giving you this example is because I'm showing you how they're paying less as the deficit is increasing because they are paying less. But when we're talking about the deficit, it affects all of us the same dollar amount, but not at the same percentage of income. Do you guys follow what I'm saying? And as part of the 27 tax cuts, businesses could deduct 100% of new costs of equipment, on new equipment cost up front. So imagine that you need a new car, and your car is going to be $50,000, and you're able to write off $50,000. Well, you can't do that as a person, but you can do it as a corporation. And these are the things that are happening. And I'm going to play a quick song, and this is why the 2017 tax cuts are still baked into this bill. So you're not hearing about them. You're only hearing about the new stuff, which we're going to cover here in a minute. But this is saying all that shit we already did, that's fucking the 99%. Yeah, keep that in there. So we don't need to talk about it, right? Because it's existing. It's already in there. We're going to make it permanent, right? Which means that our deficit is going to keep being added to, because again, you cannot keep lowering taxes and expect to not have a shortfall. And even if we could MAGA the thing, right? Even if we could flip a switch and start manufacturing stuff, there still has to be a demand for it. And manufacturing numbers have been declining since the 50s. This is not something new. This is not because of immigration. This is not, the manufacturing numbers have been decreasing because it's economically more sound to get goods that are you can buy cheaper than actually making them here in America. That's basic economics. So even if you could flip a switch like that, you would still have A, that problem, and B, you would have to be dealing with the demand. And you would have to assume that we would have the demand there to buy them. All the while, our deficit is just fucking ticking up. Okay, let me play my next song. Here we go. This is some Crocus. Okay, so Xiao had a great question. She's like, so what happens if we do fail? So I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even know how to answer the question specifically, because there's going to be so many nuances that I can't even, that I don't even know, quite frankly. But what I am going to do is we'll do a very quick speculation, but then my next show next week is going to be on the Great Depression. So I know part of what triggered the Great Depression, which is not specifically, well, to the best of our knowledge, not specifically going on right now, but I want to really dive into it. And one of the books, also as a side note, for those of you who like to read about economic stuff, one of the things, and I want to get the full name here, one of the books that I'm reading right now, let me get to my bookshelf. Okay, I can't remember the full name of it, but it is, here we go. I was in the wrong app. That's why I have multiple apps with books. Let's see here. The other one is The Myth of Capitalism, and it is written by Jonathan Tepper and Denise Hearn. And what it talks about is it talks about the myth that we have of a capitalist society, that we have free choice in our society, because most everything is owned by a couple major corporations. So once I'm done reading that book, I will explore that topic to see. I mean, I'm sure they have their facts straight. And oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, you guys. I've been up since 4:30. So anyway, we will be talking about that too. But let's speculate real quick. So if we fail, the U.S. dollar is going to tank, right? Which means that if we could continue to make anything, it would mean that our goods and services would be cheaper overseas. So everything that we're relying on the other countries to provide us, like the Philippines with the call centers and stuff, that would become us. Obviously, during the Great Depression, we saw the rise of Hoover towns, which was named after then President Hoover, who was the catalyst for the Great Depression. And of course, you remember bread lines and the bank holidays and the run on the banks. And so I am going to come back next week and explain to the best of my ability what happened during the Great Depression. And so the thing is that we would expect a repeat of that, I'm sure, which doesn't, again, make anything better. But there might be a possibility that we see that in our lifetime. And I feel bad for your kids, but I feel bad for me as well, because you take on that combined with AI coming in and changing all sectors of employment all at one time. And I talked about AI, and I talked about it leveling all the playing fields in all of the sectors across all the boards, where it's not like, the 80s auto industry where robots came in and they were pissed off that the robots were taking our job. No, this is not one sector. This is every motherfucking sector. And there's just a lot of moving parts right now that I'm hoping don't align at the same time. At the same time. So let's talk real quickly here about. So we talked about the national debt. Okay, we talked about our lowered credit rating. We talked about the fact that we are what was already in the 2017. The 2017 tax brackets. So here's what's going on as far as recession-wise, and then we're going to switch to the revamp, and then I'm going to start wrapping this up. I know I'm going long, but this is an important topic, okay? So we're seeing that manufacturing activity is contracting below 50, and so this has been for several months now. So follow that to its conclusion. If manufacturing activity is contracting, that means that people aren't buying it. Now, if people aren't buying things because of the tariffs, are people not buying things because they don't like America? Are people not buying things because maybe that's an indicator of global issues or wars or uncertainty around the world? Yes, all of that stuff could be possible, but it doesn't really matter because it's contracting. So you can argue semantics, but it doesn't change the fact that manufacturing is contracting. Consumer credit card delinquencies are on the rise. That's not a good sign. So I think I came up, it's somewhere in my notes and I don't have it, but I think that 1 point American consumer debt, I think it's currently right now at like 1.3, God, was it trillion or million? I can't fucking remember now. See, this is why I always want to distinguish the difference between million and trillion, because you don't want to mix those up, because they're talking about a difference of 31 years to 32,000 years, right? So the jump from a million to trillion is significant. But the point is that consumers are starting to become delinquent on their credit cards. Now, that is usually a bad sign. What that means is that people are either losing their jobs, okay, and maybe it hasn't shown up in the unemployment numbers yet, because remember that unemployment numbers are a lagging indicator. They show us where we were, all right? So the thing is that they might not have caught up yet, or they haven't tracked yet the fact that people are starting to lose their work, because if you're manufacturing less, this is how they're all connected in this example I'm using. If you're manufacturing less, you don't need as many people, which means that you start to have people work less hours, or you start to have people end up not needing them, and you end up letting them go. And so the first thing they're going to let go is their credit cards, because fuck that, who cares? It's unsecured debt. And it's specific right now, the delinquencies to credit cards and auto loans, which are the first two things. Like your credit cards go first, right? Then your auto loan if you need to. And the last thing would be your house, would be, wherever you reside, whether you rent or own it, it doesn't really matter. Commercial real estate loans, they're defaulting. They're increasing, especially in office building. And so now let's tie this back. This is what I want to do through all my shows the best I can, is I want you to tie back to see why we're at where we're at. So remember COVID, right? Everybody had to work from home. And then that forced companies to put in the infrastructure that they needed in order to allow people to work from home. And what that meant is that the office buildings, I did a whole show on this, about the office buildings are sitting empty. And that affected commercial REITs, real estate investment trusts, which I also did a show on. And then here we go. This is where the dominoes fall. So everything I talk about is always connected to something else. And it is so important that you understand how everything is connected, so that you can help yourself better understand what that means for you and your family potentially. This is so important. Job growth is slowing. And we're starting to see layoffs, very, very small, creeping into tech and finance. So technology just had a little growth spurt after losing its ass in March and April, and it seemed to get back on track. However, we're starting to see layoffs are creeping up in there, and we see that the yield curve is still inverted. So what that means is that if there is a yield curve inversion, means that if people are concerned that the economy is going to be in a bad way, they are going to go out and they are going to purchase longer term debt. So basically what they're saying is they think that we're going to have a recession in the near future, which means that any debt that they buy, whether it's from a municipality or from the government, might have a potential higher risk of default. So they're going to go buy things that have a term of 10 years plus. And when we talk about bonds, I know you can't see it, but it's in my book. You think of a teeter-totter. One side is your value, one side is the yield. So as the yields go down, that means the value goes up. That means people are running into them and buying them. There's a lot of money going into it, meaning that they're pushing the yield down. If people start leaving the bond sector because they think that they can get better growth in the stock market, then the bonds go down and the actual yield goes up. That's the teeter-totter, but we're still sitting at an inverted yield curve. Okay, these are recession indicators. So if you take everything I just told you, and then you put that blueprint in a recession, we have a higher percentage of debt to GDP, right? We have tax cuts to the very wealthy and the corporations who are laying off people. So we have a 21%, the base of a corporation who then gets to lay off people to be able to protect their shares on their shareholders and of their C-suite executives, which ends up exacerbating the problem for the 99%. And here we fucking go again. All right. So let's talk about, actually, I'm going to play one song and then I'm going to come and knock this motherfucker out, and then we're going to be done. So let's, I already did play an AC/DC song, but I really do love this song, but we're not going to play that one. Okay, this is going to be my last song. When I come back, I am going to go through all of the revisions as far as what was in the bill when it was originally generated by the House, what the Senate proposed, and what's going back and forth. But remember, everything that I told you is still in play. It's still in play. So this is in addition to the tax cuts that have already been granted and been in place since 2017 through the Biden administration and into Trump's second term. So, real quickly, one of the things Gramufa Bits put in chat, and I love when you guys do this because it's important to me that you get as good of information as I can provide you. So I would rather be corrected and make sure that you're getting the most out of my show, since you're dedicating part of your life to listen to it, which I'm so forever grateful. So one of the things that Gramufa Bits said is that it's student debt is currently at $1.3 trillion, which we haven't even talked about student debt. I did talk about when Biden had the big push to forgive student debt. I did talk about how the assumptions of that would dissipate into the economy. And one of the things I said in the last show is that I had seen somewhere that the expectation was between $15,000 and $30,000 income earners would have by 2029 an effective tax rate of about 74.3%, which sounded a little bit ludicrous, but I did find the clip. and it is in front of a Senate hearing, and it is believe an economist who was doing projections that the economist put up that the effective tax rate would be 74% for the people making anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000. I do have that. If you want to DM me on finances at Instagram, finances the other F word, all one word is my handle. I can send you the clip. I'm trying my damnedest not to put political stuff on my stories because I just want it to be, fun and relaxing. But I would be more than happy to send you that clip so you can see what I am referring to. So let's go ahead and let's talk about. I don't know. I didn't get the. I don't know. Dr. Love, I didn't get your comment. I'm so sorry. I'm so confused by it. But anyway, so thank you, Gramufa Bits, for letting us know. So that's 1.3 trillion. That's not including credit cards. All right. But the point is that delinquencies are going up. That is a recession indicator, and that is not good. So let's talk a little bit about the House version versus the Senate version of the big, beautiful tax bill. And keep in mind, all of the stuff we've just talked about over the last hour, I know I repeat myself a lot, but I do it because I want what I'm telling you to stick. And typically, when you're talking to somebody, you need to say it 3 times before they remember it. And doing what I do for a living, it's called covering your ass. So the client can't say, oh, well, you didn't tell me that. The fuck I didn't, motherfucker. I told you at least 3 times, and then I noted it, and then I put it in a follow-up email. So I don't want to hear nothing about nothing. We talked about this conversation, which, to be fair, my clients are amazing, and I don't have issues like that. But that's the reason why I repeat myself so much, because I want the things I tell you to stick, so that you remember them in the future, or that if you hear something or you see some type of article, you have a little bit more context. And then when you go do your independent research, or you put that in context to what's important in your life, then you have a better jumping off point. So let's talk about the child tax credit. So the House said $2,500 per child. Now remember, $2,000 is in effect right now, right? We just covered that. The House said it's $2,500 per child. The Senate said this is the most recent revision that was given. I think it was Thursday afternoon or Friday, whatever, of $2,200 per child. The SALT deduction, the House version raised it so that was state and local taxes. So this allows people who are in taxes that are paying taxes to change that from, to write that off on their federal taxes. The House wanted it raised to $40,000, and the Senate is saying no, keep it at the $10,000 current cap. The tip income deduction, the House wants it to be unlimited, and the Senate is saying cap it at $25,000. So you can get $25,000 of basically free income through tip income. Now, let me touch on that for a second. Awesome. If you're a person who gets tips and you get a lot of your tips, that's fantastic. Good for you. However, let's take that back to the 99%. We already know, I've done a series on minimum wage so many fucking times, and I just talked about it recently a couple months ago. I took like almost 2 months off, but I talked about it where the food industry gets away with paying their people less than a living wage by far because they rely on our tips. So as I'm super happy for this, that, you can get either unlimited tips for free without being taxed, or it can be capped at $25,000, which thus means you get $25,000 income that's not being taxed, which means it's adding to our deficit. Plus, you get $25,000 in your pocket that you don't have to claim. Sounds great. However, what happens is that you and I, we go and we work and we get a 1099 or we get a W-2 and we get taxed on it. Then what we do is we go to a restaurant and we buy food, and then we are expected to pay anywhere between 15 to 20% on those taxes, on that check. That is the norm, which means that the food and restaurant industry, hospitality industry, doesn't have to pay their workers as much money because they are expecting you and I to pick up the slack. So that means that our W-2 and our 1099 income was taxed. And then we go and slap it down on the table, and then whoever the server is or whoever it is you're tipping, they get to keep that money, and it doesn't get taxed again, but it is income to them. Now, I know that that's not a popular thing, and to be fair, the 1% is not, slinging tables, right? So this is something that is going to directly affect the 99%, but this is one of the things of how it eats into more of our money. And so the thing is that if you have money that you pay tax on that you're giving to somebody else that they don't have to pay taxes on, that is potential more taxes lost that adds to the deficit. But again, if you make a big bulk of your living off of tips, good for you. Like, no animosity towards you, but I want you to understand what that looks like moving through the economy, right? Okay, so tip income deduction, the House says unlimited. Make as much as you want to, okay, in tips, and you don't have to claim any of it. So if you're somebody who works at a very high-end restaurant here in Vegas or at a Michelin star restaurant, and you're getting paid crazy high tips, basically your total income is dropping out of the tax pool, which is adding to the deficit. So not only are we lowering the tax rates on the wealthiest Americans, we are also removing some other Americans' tax income out of the tax pool, which of course is just adding to the deficit. Overtime deduction. The House says unlimited deduction. Okay. And the Senate says capped at $12,500. So the Senate is coming in a little bit more conservative, right? Now this is interesting. This is very interesting. There's an auto loan interest deduction that was not proposed by the House, that the Senate said, hey, we would like to up to $10,000 for people earning less than $100,000 a year, we would like to give them the ability to write off their auto loan interest up to $10,000 on their federal taxes. Now, we used to be able to do this with houses. You used to be able to write off your mortgage interest, but then what happened is that the standard deduction increased, and so itemization kind of went away unless you are a very wealthy person. And so what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's include, get your words right, Mel, let's add that if you make less than $100,000 a year, you can write on your taxes off auto loan interest of up to $10,000. Okay. And then the MAGA savings account, right? So, sweet baby Jesus. The MAGA savings account is where if you have a child, then you open up, it's a savings account, and the government funds $1,000 into this savings account. And then all of your friends and relatives can continue to put money into this savings account so that it can grow for the child. Okay. And which sounds pretty cool, right? I mean, $1,000 is not really anything, but it sounds really cool. Of course, if you're the most poorest Americans, then you're not going to be able to put anything else into it, and you can't access it unless it is specifically for certain qualified reasons. And if you do pull from it and it's not for a qualified reason, like to feed your family, then you have to pay taxes and penalties on that money. So it is called, and I did not make this up, this is what it is called, the MAGA savings account. Okay, it's $1,000 per child. Now let's talk about our social safety nets. And this is where the cuts come in. Now, I am mixed on this. I don't like the fact that Medicaid is going to be cut because I've had friends that have needed Medicaid, and some of them had lifelong disabilities that they need it. But you have also heard me staying truthful. You have also heard me talk multiple times that 2/3 of our budget is the entitlement programs, which is Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. Well, they're not going to cut Medicare because Medicare is their voting base. That's your boomers, right? They're not going to cut Social Security because that's your voting base. That's your boomers. So they are going after Medicaid to try to compensate for the fact that the taxes are so low on the highest income earners. So what they are doing is the House said for Medicaid work requirements, they are required for adults with kids that are 14 plus. Okay, so there's new, I don't have the requirements, they're just requirements. The Senate is saying, yes, let's do that, but let's make it even harder. So what they're saying is, yes, we approve, we want your new restrictions, but we also want to make them a little bit harder and exempt more people. All right. So that is for people who are currently on Medicaid. This is welfare. So this is going to indirectly affect the lowest percentage earners in America. Medicaid copays. They're going to require Medicaid copays, and the Senate says, yep, samesies. We want to do that too. We agree with that. Provider tax cuts. I'm going to talk about this here in a moment. The House said we want it phased out by 2031, and the Senate said we want it softened and reduced into 3.5%. Put a pin in that. I'm going to come right back to it. SNAP. Okay. So this is basically your food stamps. House version says tougher eligibility, make it harder for them to get food, help for their food. And Senate goes, yeah, same, we're good with that. And here's the kicker for me specifically, for the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, they want the subsidies to end by 2027, which is less than, a little over 2.5 years away. And the Senate goes, yeah, we're cool with that. So what that means is for my independent business owners like myself, there is a very good probability that we will not have health care. So unless you're my dad, so let me just share a little side note because I'm pissed off right now. This was a conversation I had with my fucking father in December. So we were talking about everything going on, and I was telling him that my concern is that if Obamacare gets cut, that I am not going to be able to afford health insurance for myself. So even though I make my own paycheck, I take all the risk on myself, I won't be able to go to the doctor with any type of health insurance. And this was my MAGA dad's response. Well, kiddo, if you just stop going out so much, I'm sure you could afford decent health care. I've not talked to him since December. That was one part of the conversation. Okay, so let's go back to this provider tax cuts. Okay, so this is where shit gets real. All right. So a provider tax is to like hospitals and places that actually serve people who are on Medicaid and Medicare. And so what happens is that the state taxes those facilities. They take that tax and then they go to the federal government and they say, hey, look, we have $5 million in taxes, and the federal government matches them with $5 million so that they now have $10 million so that they can take care of the poorest people in their state. So what the House is saying is get rid of it. By 2031, no more. Okay? And the Senate is saying, no, don't phase it out, but reduce it by 3.5%. So what does this mean? This means that the states would have less funds to match to be able to get more funds from the federal government to help to take care of the poorest Americans, thus extrapolating the impact that the poorest Americans see. This is the 99%. Now, within the 99%, there's the ones that are at the top that are not technically one percenters, but they still make decent money, all the way down to the struggling household who is just trying to put food on the table, literally. All right. And so the thing is that while I believe that there needs to be something addressed on the entitlement programs, I would like to see that happen with an increase on taxes for the wealthiest, so that for everything that we're cutting, we get a little bit more money in, because in the end, we need to reduce our deficit. So the cutting is not equaling what we should be making up in taxes. So clean energy and environment, confirmation bias alert right here, because I'm a tree hugger all day, motherfuckers. So they're rolling back the House says roll back almost all of the IRA green tax credits, and the Senate says roll back a little bit of it. EV and solar incentives, the House says eliminate them, and the Senate says eliminate them, but gradually do it over time. So defense and border security, which is the issue that the administration is focusing their time and energy on right now. According to the House version, they want to spend $70 billion on border security funding, and they want to spend military spending about $150 billion. And the Senate says, yep, good on both of those. So I wish I had the knowledge, and I wish I had a chart where I could say, okay, this is what we're giving up in programs, and this is what we're tacking on, and this is the difference in the taxes, and to see if we would actually shake out. But obviously, since we know that the expectation, if this passes as is, that this bill would add anywhere between $2.4 trillion to $3 trillion to the deficit over the next 10 years, we obviously know, like common logic will tell you, that we're spending more than we're taking in. That's why the deficit is being increased upon, right? Increased upon, I don't know where that came from, but you know what I'm saying. We're wrapping this up. I'm about as angry as I can get right now, and we're gonna have to start taking this down so I can get on with my day and calm the fuck down. So basically, here's the debt ceiling. Here's the debt ceiling, right? We talked about this. We've talked about this. So we're going to talk about it again, because every time it comes around, it fucking sends shivers through the financial markets. The House says, let's raise, they want to raise it by $4 trillion. And the Senate says, no, we want to raise it by $5 trillion. All right. So take everything that I just said to you, take everything in context, and weave it through so you can see all of the moving parts with our national debt, with the percentage of GDP overage that we're currently spending, with the downgrade of the the downgrade of our credit ratings on our current bonds, with the contraction of GDP due to a recession, which the indicators are showing, a bigger percentage of the budget already cutting through the big, beautiful bill, as it's deemed, which makes me vomit in my mouth, already affecting the poorest Americans, and then add on all of that other stuff that I just put out there for you guys to enjoy. That's the state that we're in right now. And it goes far beyond Republican and Democrat, because every president since Clinton has added to the deficit. So there's been Democrats in there, there's been Republicans in there, but in the end, we all end up getting fucked the most. So, sweet baby Jesus. Let me look at, hey, Happy, I'm just signing off, but thanks for coming, man. Let's see. Show up and let you show up and listen. Okay. It's finances. Here you go, Dr. Liz. Let me, there you go. It's just finances, the other F word on Instagram. And yeah. So let's see. I'm looking through the comments just to see. Oh, okay. I think there's some other conversation going on that doesn't have to do with me. Yeah, so Gramufabit says the darn avocado toast. So one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to actually take, since that seems to be the hot button issue that they've hung on millennials, which I think is extremely unfair. Obviously, Gen X is the best generation, but millennials, there's a lot of very positive mind shifts that are coming out of the millennials in regards to work. And one of the things that I saw is that Bernie Sanders, when it comes to AI, he had said something very interesting. And it said something to the effect of that the benefit that AI is giving to the corporations, where it is help, basically stepping in where there's manpower, should be given as a benefit to the workers to work a 4-day work week, which I thought was so interesting. However, that's not how America runs, right? So the corporations are going to use AI. They're going to start laying off people, and we're not going to have the shorter 4-day work week. But man, wouldn't that be great if the 99% could take advantage of the technologies that we are supplementing? The 99% are. I mean, that's what we're doing. They talk about a lot of the welfare programs. That people are getting free rides, but we're supplementing. I mean, I just told you the numbers, right? So I don't care how you feel. Numbers don't care how you feel, right? This is what's happening, and this is where I think the phrase, welfare for billionaires keeps coming in. Let's see, avian flu. Oh yeah, so the egg industry. So Xiao was talking about that, and Metal Destruction's talking about that as well. So you guys are right on it. So so She Owl says, no, I'm sorry. So Happy's talking about what people were freaking out over egg prices. She Owl says now they're freaking out because eggs are being injected with vaccines. And then Metal Destruction says the egg industry was blaming avian flu. Guess what their profit was from gouging of Americans. Now, please believe that even when this is all done, that they're not going to lower egg prices. The days of $2 dozen eggs, because this is what happens with corporations. Even after the expense of whatever issue clears itself, whether it's the avian flu or whatever, they are used to now getting a certain profit margin. And if their cost of goods sold gets less because let's say the avian flu passes, they're used to getting that fat profit margin. And we know that corporations, specifically ones that are publicly traded, they say, quite frankly, in their mission statements, that their loyalty is to make profits for their shareholders, which means that if you're not a shareholder or if you're not in the game of investing, you are missing out. You are missing out. And this is how we build on everything. So we have, let's say with the tariffs, right? So our cost of goods sold goes from a $5 t-shirt that you buy overseas to now a $7 t-shirt. But let's say another administration comes in and gets rid of all the tariffs. So now that t-shirt that was $7 is now only $5. Well, if the company could sell it at $10 or $11 under tariffs, but now there's no tariffs, but you're used to paying it for $10 or $11, then you're just going to keep doing it. And this is how the invisible effect that happens to the 99%. That happens through the corporate greed. And I want you guys to understand this so much, because we focus on this guy in office is doing this, but this guy didn't do it, or this guy did do it, or whatever. But what we don't see is that it's really accumulation of all of these little things that will make us wake up one day and go, what the absolute fuck? And that is going to be what I'm going to talk about next week when I talk about what happened during the Great Depression. How did we get there? Are we trending there now? And I don't want to be alarmist. But what I want to do for me and for you is I want to understand better what caused the Great Depression, so that as we know that our current deficit is 121 to 124% of GDP currently, and is expected to only rise, what that means. Could that tip us into a Great Depression? Because I really don't want to fucking go through that myself, right? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely she. And the scarcity mind. Yeah. So basically, she's saying, they'll see what people are willing to pay for their product, and then they're going to keep it that way, and then it triggers a scarcity mindset. Of course. So Happy Smoke says, yesterday I saw a small tub of Ben & Jerry's for $8. So, and Gramufa Bits, and we'll end with this. He says, all 99% need to find solidarity. It's what the top fears. And this is why I tell you, as we sign off here, and you'll see I'm rebranding right now, which is why I've been absent on social media, is that the 99%, there's more of us than there are of them. And this is what I hope you get from my show. I hope that you that you get power in the knowledge of what is happening. Yes, I understand, Dream Warrior always says, we're all going to die. I understand my show is maybe not super uplifting, but I want you to understand what is happening so that we can start seeing the signs when Congress and the 1% are doing things that are derogatorily going to affect us and our families, that we understand it so that we can combat it. Because one of the things is that you need to understand what's going on in order to understand what you have to fight against, or what you're fighting for in the place of your family. You know what I'm saying? Yes, Dr. Liz, knowledge is power. So with that, I will be back next week, and I'm going to be talking about some of the things that led up to the Great Depression. I'm going to be parlaying them, if they make sense, to what is happening now, or if there's nothing similar to what's happening now, then we're not gonna create stuff, is what I'm saying. So I'm not here to fearmonger. I'm here to understand myself, because I'm just as concerned as you are. If they take away Obamacare, I'm fucked, you guys. I'm fucked. So, and there you be. Good. Thank you. So Ed Concert, I don't come here to be uplifted. I come here to learn, and I do good. Yes, because I know the uplifting is not is sometimes not on the agenda. So with that, finance is the other F word. Thank you, Stuart. I appreciate that. Finance is the other F word. And Station Head, I will see you back next Wednesday. Thank you, Dream Warrior. I will see you guys back next week, where we will be talking about the lead up to the Great Depression, and if any of that parlays to today. And I will see you Wednesday at 6 a.m. Pacific time. And with that, finances, the other F word. I am out this bitch.
Thanks for listening. Please like, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.